3 minutes. 3 minutes until showtime. Two minutes. 2 minutes to showtime. One minute. 1 minute until showtime.
Virus cases continue to rise across the country. President-elect Joe Biden is demanding access to classified briefings regarding the pandemic.
There really is no cooperation when it comes to a transition. The Trump administration is keeping Biden's team from gaining access to security briefings and other government tools. This morning, Dr. Anthony Fauci with the National Institutes of Health transition is needed desperately, especially as a vaccine gets ready to roll out to the public. Dr. Fauci went on to say the president has not attended a COVID-19 pandemic briefing in months.
Fox's David Spunt. The General Services Administration not releasing funds earmarked for transition by the Biden team because of continued election challenges from the Trump team. Georgia's Senate race goes to runoffs on January 5th. Republican Senator David Perdue on Fox's Sunday Morning Futures.
We heard Schumer just last week say that if we take Georgia, we change America. We heard AOC say they have to have these two seats because they don't want to negotiate. They want total control.
Republicans are expected to hold the 50 to 48 lead into the runoffs. If Democrats win both seats, the Senate will be split evenly, giving Vice President Kamala Harris the decision-making tiebreaker vote. President Trump fired Mark Esper, Secretary of Defense. Esper apparently sending a memo after the president tweeted U.S. troops in Afghanistan should be home by Christmas.
In trying to strike a deal, you don't unilaterally surrender your greatest point of leverage by unilaterally withdrawing troops before the Afghan government and the Taliban have struck a deal.
Jay Johnson, former Homeland Security Secretary under President Obama, on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Esper's replacement writing a message to U.S. troops Friday saying it's time to come home. America's listening to Fox News.
2020 has already reshaped how we work, and it's almost over.
You must unite as a citizen.
We are TFR, Truth Frequency Radio.
I hope you were one of the 250,000 people that were watching that live broadcast of the SpaceX launch with 4 astronauts going up to low Earth orbit, ready to hook up to the International Space Station. That was really, really cool. Thanks, everybody, for showing up tonight. This is X Squared Radio, where the past meets the future. And here the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us. We are coming to you live from the America Free Radio Studios from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. We are streaming live through the Truth Frequency Radio Network, where the Truth Freaks hang out, and we are not afraid to let our Truth Freak flag fly. Tuning in here will treat, cure, and prevent the disease of ignorance. We're also streaming live on YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, Facebook, and DLive, all at the same time. The marvels of technology. I encourage you, if you are listening on any of those platforms, to go to dlive.tv/Brooks Agnew, all one word. Somebody said, it's all one word. That's why I couldn't find you. Well, I'm going to put it in the chat so everybody has it. And the reason I say that is we're kind of on borrowed time with YouTube. YouTube has systematically taken down all of the sources of truth, and many of my colleagues have been relegated, that is to say, deleted off of YouTube, and so they scattered to the other platforms. DLive seems to be the one that has a blockchain basis to it, and it does a pretty good job. Been communicating with those guys today, and hopefully tonight's program will actually be on archive, so you'll be able to play it for the next 3 days. Doesn't matter, because Wednesday we have another program coming up, so it's okay. So I'm monitoring the chat from all of these platforms at the same time. So I want to say hello to everybody that showed up early. 7P, Truth Frequency News. Good to see you out there, Lucky. Let's see. 7P, Baba Susie. Feel them good vibes. I like that. From Northern Alberta, Canada. Very good. Peace to you, my brother. Festus B. and Nexus Nextcast. Very good. DLive. Thumb up. Whatever that means. I don't know. Anyway, it's going to be a lively program. I have way, way more notes than I can cover in tonight's program. But you are in luck, because this is the Sunday night program. So you can go to my website at americafreeradio.com, and you can click on the program notes button, and you can get them all the links, all my research, and you can do your own research on your own time if you like. Boo, good to see you out there. Thank you so much. Diane Doucette. Yeah, I get it. Well, yeah, you can chat on D Live as well, but you can chat on YouTube. That's fine. I can see that as well, and it's a little faster. Servers at D Live will be coming up too. Sue Hinson, good to see you out there. All right, let's get started. Let me give you the Religion of Peace report first. In the last 7 days, the Religion of Peace conducted a staggering 34 attacks. In these 34 attacks, they killed 184 innocent people, injured 140 innocent people, conducted 3 suicide blasts, and spread their mayhem across 12 countries. All of this from the Religion of Peace. Kind of had our own events the last couple days in D.C. If you've seen a lot of the videos on some of the social media. But I want to cover what this is all about. You know, a lot of people think we got taken by surprise, that President Trump didn't know what was coming. Nobody's doing anything. Why isn't anybody being arrested? Why is the rumor that John Durham has not found anything and he's going to disband his group and everybody's going home, and Attorney General Barr didn't find any wrongdoing, everything is fine, nothing to see here? Well, I want to set your heart at ease, because with knowledge comes security of mind. On September 12th, 2018, this would be over 2 years ago, there was an executive order that was issued. I'm going to read portions of this executive order to you, and then I'm going to explain to you what it was, why it was put in place, and the power of this executive order, and why, maybe it being put in place 2 years ago, it took our enemies by surprise through complacency. Good to see you, Cherokee Drifter. Nice to see you out there. Excellent, excellent. Chat room is filling up. Executive order on imposing certain sanctions in the event of foreign interference in a United States election. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Okay. By the authority vested in me as president, by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the National Emergencies Act, and the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952. I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, find that the ability of a persons located in whole or in substantial part, that would be a global corporation, a global syndicate, outside the United States to interfere in or undermine public confidence. Would that be your confidence? Yes, it would. In the United States elections, including through the unauthorized accessing of election and campaign infrastructure or the covert distribution of propaganda and disinformation, constitutes an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. Pretty clear, isn't it? Although there has been no evidence of foreign power altering the outcome or vote tabulation in any United States election as of September 2018, foreign powers have historically, I have this all outlined in yellow so I can see it brightly, have historically sought to exploit America's free and open political system. In recent years, the proliferation of digital devices and the internet-based communications has created significant vulnerabilities and magnified the scope and the intensity of the threat of foreign interference. I hereby declare a national emergency to deal with this threat. Were you aware that the 2020 election was conducted under the auspices of a national emergency. It is important to have this declared because it empowers the president to take certain actions. Accordingly, I hereby order, not later than 45 days after the conclusion of a United States election, the Director of National Intelligence, in consultation with the heads of any other appropriate executive departments and agencies, shall conduct an assessment of any information indicating that a foreign government or any person acting as an agent or on behalf of a foreign government, global syndicate, has acted with the intent or purpose of interfering in that election. Gosh, that's so prophetic. 2 years ago? Wow. Talk about 5D chess. The assessment shall identify to the maximum extent ascertainable the nature of any foreign interference and any methods employed to execute it, the persons involved, and the foreign government or governments that authorized, directed, sponsored, or supported it. The Director of National Intelligence, that would be the DNI, used to be Mr. Grinnell, right? Shall deliver this assessment and appropriate supporting information to the president. What? Not to CNN? Not to the New York Post? Oh my God. They're going to deliver it directly to the president. Amazing. Amazing. And the Secretary of State, Pompeo. The Secretary of the Treasury, Stephen Mnuchin. The Secretary of Defense. Oh, we just changed the Secretary of Defense. We now have an acting Secretary of Defense, Kash Patel. No, it's not spelt with a Q, but it could be. The Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security. The extent to which any foreign interference that targeted election infrastructure materially affected the security or integrity of that infrastructure, the tabulation of votes, or the timely transmission of election results. Wow, there weren't timely transmissions of election results? Stop the count at 4 o'clock in the morning, midnight or 10:30 or whenever it was. Now, if any foreign interference involved activities targeting the infrastructure of or pertaining to a political organization, a campaign, or a candidate, the extent to which such activities materially affected the security or integrity of that infrastructure, including by unauthorized access to, disclosure or threatened disclosure of, or alteration or falsification of information or data, including the vote count. Wow. Yes. Now, what does this do? All property and interests in property that are in the United States, that hereafter come within the United States, or that are or hereafter come within the possession or control of any United States person, of the following persons, are blocked and may not be transferred. And what I'm talking about here are things that are paid, things that are exported, withdrawn, or otherwise dealt in. Any foreign person determined by the Secretary of the Treasury, Stephen Mnuchin, very strong, very loyal patriot, in consultation with the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and the Secretary of Homeland Security, to have directly or indirectly engaged in sponsored, concealed, or otherwise been complicit in foreign interference in a United States election, to have materially assisted, to have sponsored or provided financial, material, or technological support for, or goods or services to or in support of any activity described in subsection A, paragraph I of this section, or any person whose property and interests in property are blocked. Or, and this is important, to be owned or controlled by, or to have acted or purported to act for or on behalf of, directly or indirectly, any person whose property or interests in property are blocked. In other words, this is why the election has gone nowhere since election night. Those 6 states that purposefully withheld their count are now unable to do so because the assets have been blocked. The foreign interference has been discovered. Includes any covert, fraudulent, deceptive, or unlawful actions or attempted actions of a foreign government or any person acting as an agent of or in behalf of a foreign government, undertaken with the purpose or effect of influencing, undermining confidence in, or altering the result or reported result of the election, or undermining public confidence in the election processes or institutions. I think generally speaking, we have been undermined. It means this. Way back in 2012, I wasn't a member of the Truth Frequency Radio Network. I was a member of another network at the time. But I broke a story on the acquisition of a company called Skytel, or SCYTL. This company exists in Barcelona, Spain. It was, in the 2008 election, involved in collecting the tally from several states inside the United States during a federal election. They have done so for every election since. The U.S. government, once they determined that this company was part of what's called, let's just call it the Dominion system. The Dominion system came to be when the Diebold voting system, Diebold was the one that developed the voting machine, that you feed the ballot into. They became so big and they bought out all the competition, they pretty much had a monopoly. So what happened is the U.S. government stepped in and under the Sherman Antitrust Act, broke the company up. They authorized the major portions of this company to be bought as they were being broken up. One of the companies that stepped in was a company called Dominion out of Canada. Now, Dominion was already in the business. They purchased a major portion of the Diebold voting systems. In order for this to take place, it has to be approved by 6 or 5 different U.S. agencies, with the center one being the State Department. Now, in order for this to take place back in 2008, the State Department had to approve it. The State Department had to look at the purchase and say, there's no threat to the United States of America. We approve this acquisition, which they did. At the time, Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State. So she approved the purchase of Diebold by Dominion. Now, what we didn't know at the time is that Dominion would, either at the time or subsequent to that purchase, be invested in by the Clinton Foundation. So the Secretary of State, Clinton, approved the purchase of the Diebold voting system by Dominion, and Dominion was then, or would soon be, partially owned by the Clinton Foundation. and their servers would then be involved in U.S. elections. The server was involved in switching votes. We know this. Then the intelligence community began a search for the server, and they discovered that the server was in Germany. Even though the company was based in Barcelona, the server was in Germany. Now, in order to get access to that server and have it available for use in a legal manner subsequent to the executive order, because this is now a outside foreign government involved in collecting and altering the vote totals of an American election, they had to have the State Department work in tandem with the Department of Justice. They had to request that the government of Germany cooperate in allowing a seizure of the server. The appropriate documents required to effect that kind of seizure were put in place, signed off on. It appears there was also a U.S. military support in this operation. The U.S. military was not in the lead. Remember, I told you the value of removing Secretary of Defense Esper as Secretary of Defense and replacing him with Kash Patel. We talked about this last week. Now, the military did not interfere with the operation in any way, but in fact, they backed up the action team. Is more significant than you know. This was a parliamentary operation, I believe, pursuant to the Executive Order 13694, which I just read you a significant portion of it. The property and equipment operated by a foreign power to influence or alter the results of the U.S. election are specifically mentioned in the executive order. By getting a hold of the server, they are now going to have the direct evidence of when they were instructed to stop counting. They will also discover who gave the direction to stop counting. You notice it happened in all the states that withheld at the same time. Stop the count. Send the Republican poll watchers home. And then millions of votes were dropped into the system. And who initiated the algorithm that started switching the votes? Also known. By the way, the CIA was completely excluded from this operation. I will make a prediction tonight that Gina Haspel, the director of the CIA, will be fired within 24 hours of tonight's program. I doubt she will be afforded the opportunity to resign. This entire operation is in violation of the state of emergency and the Executive Order 13694. I told you about Skytel. I exposed the diamond cartel who originally financed it. It was used in 14 states in 2010 to tally votes. It was founded in 2001 in Barcelona. Its products and services are used in elections and referenda all over the world. In June of 2020, Skytel was utilized in the 2016 election, but the Obama administration was confident that Hillary would win handily against Donald Trump. The cache of counterfeit ballots was in short supply for that reason. I believe they were warned about trying to use massive amounts of counterfeit ballots in 2020. But the global syndicate's lust for power was so great, and their fear of losing the government they had so carefully built for nearly 3 decades was looming like a dark cloud of judgment. They threw caution to the wind and generated the ballots anyway. Then they connected Skytel to Dominion. Skytel was founded in 2001, and it grew out of a cryptography research project at the Autonomous University of Barcelona. The name is a reference to the Skytail, or the ancient cryptographic tool. It became profitable in 2006, and in 2014, it reported 70% annual revenue growth. It brought SOE software. It bought SOE software in 2012. It intended to go public in 2016, but delayed the IPO because of poor performance in developing markets and the 2016 election, and decided to focus on developed country markets as well as on election solutions for non-government customers. In 2017, SkyTel reported having 600 employees. That's a big company, of which a third were in Barcelona. In 2016, it divided itself into 3 companies. The original SkyTel Secure Electronic Voting, which develops voting software. SkyTel Voting Hardware SL, which develops voting hardware owned by SkyTel and an anonymous Dubai-based investor. And Civity, formerly Open Seneca, which focuses on civic participation services. The company's systems have been implemented in numerous countries, but the problems have cropped up over the years in some of its solutions and some of its voting systems, including those used in Australia, Ecuador, Norway, Switzerland. Now, the investors in this were originally venture capital investors. I looked them up back in 2011. It raised $9 million in 2006 from investors including Balderton Capital and Nauta Capital, and $104 million in 2014 in multiple funding rounds from investors including, and this is important, it'll be on the test later, Vulcan Capital and Sapphire Ventures, Vi Capital, Adams Street Partners and Industry Ventures. Paul Allen, co-founder of Microsoft with Bill Gates, invested $40 million in 2014. Quick break. We'll be right back after this. Let me go ahead and do this very quickly. Remember how to do this. There's one thing I have to do here. Is silence the studio. I have to do that now because the studio runs a recording of stuff that YouTube doesn't like. And so they gig me and keep me from being monetized. So I'm going to continue. The people with TFR can't hear me because there's a commercial going on right now, but I'm going to continue communicating with the chat room really quick. For these 3 minutes, and then we will resume the news. Brian Lancaster, good to see you out there. Important topic to share with those who don't get this fraud. I agree. There's so much disinformation out there about this. Dr. Strangerlove, good to see you out there. He said, and this is important, we have forsaken God. What happens to this government will be biblical. You will need your neighbors more now than ever and get right with God. You can't go wrong there. Can't go wrong there, Doc. Eric, good to see you out there. So Robert David Steele claims the Army has secured, can't remember the voting machine company's name. That would be the Skytel servers. I don't know. I think that the attempt was made to grab the servers, but I think the servers were already out by the time they got there. I don't think they got them. I think somebody else got them. Somebody in the deep state. And maybe there was a little bit of fighting going on there. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because all the information was already had. The actual physical servers were not really that necessary. What was necessary was for them to believe that there was a military operation to get the servers so that they would make a move to get them out. And once they did, they were caught. So there's a little bit more of the story to tell there, Eric, and I don't know have all the details, but I'm just telling you they may not have those servers. Okay. AEI, whatever is that? Louis? That's got to be French. He thinks we're getting ready to invade Canada. Maybe. I don't think so. Big Hoove, good to see you out there. Galtz, anyone here waiting for salty? Nope, I'm waiting for my orange juice, though. Let me have a sip. That's so good. Galtz, good to see you out there. Let's see. Aoi says, I am COVID with you for a while. This is good. Whatever that means. I've been working on my COVID-15, and I've got about 8 pounds to go. I'm getting a leg up on it because my gym opened up again. So I've been pretty good about it this weekend. What is that? Kryptos? I don't know what Kryptos is. Feel them good vibes. Dominion voting machines were also used in many provinces in Canada during our 2019 federal election. Guess who won? Yeah, guess who won, right? Castro's kid. Castro's clone. I got you. All right. That's all good stuff. Mark Hovsepian, good to see you out there. Vote by satellite, straight up in the voting station, straight down to a secure military server, no middleman. I kind of like the physical vote in person with ID, and I like the purple finger. I'm good with the validation verification. Okay, let's bring the studio back in, and let's get this party started again. All right. Well, there we go. Now we're back. We're good. Okay, we're on the air. Very good. So welcome back to the second segment of America Free Radio, coming to you live through the Truth Frequency Radio Network, where the Truth Freaks hang out. We're also streaming live on all these other platforms. So if you're listening by audio, you're going to be listening to the commercials while the rest of us talk about the chat room, and then we'll come right back to you guys right after the commercials. So all this ties together. It is not all that complex to think about. Dominion is a company that puts systems in place. There are 30 states inside the United States that use the Dominion system. Several states, Florida, Texas, others, said, you know what, we tested it, we don't like it. It's too open to hacking. We don't like foreign countries seeing our votes before we get them tallied. I think we're just going to stick with our own systems. And the other states, all of whom, the ones that have not reported yet, are tied into the Dominion system. So I'm going to reveal at the end of this hour, I'm not going to wait the whole 3 hours, I'm going to reveal it to you now what the Trump strategy is. I've kind of given you snapshots of it since Easter because I knew what was coming, and I guessed what was coming. No one told me. I'm kind of an intuitive person that way. And as we speak, the assets and holdings of these companies and individuals are being seized by the U.S. Treasury. That means the Secret Service, backed by special forces, is out there doing the job. That's why President Trump is so quiet. That's why Obama sent his Antifa thugs to D.C. to attack innocent Americans this weekend. He wants his war. I have news for him. The money to have his war is going to be seized and used to pay off the national debt. The $10 trillion stolen by the Obama administration will all be recovered with interest. We are in the most dangerous time of our nation's existence. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. World War II doesn't even hold a candle to this. For the first time in history, Americans are being attacked and killed on American soil in our own towns, our own cities. With no schools to shoot up to purge the headlines of bad press for them, the OFA, that's Organization or Organizing for Action, which is run by Barack Hussein Obama, was founded in 2013 while he was in office, a clear and present danger to the United States of America. They now have over 52,000 paid soldiers, activists, trainers, floating around the country, organizing and funding these attacks, and they're going to be coming for you. So you watch your eyes and you stay aware of your situation at all times. Make sure you keep a full tank of gas. Make sure you keep some cash on hand. Store at least a week's supply of food. Have an escape plan made and rehearsed so each of you knows where to meet after the initial attack. Oh yeah, the attack. I've told you before. The global syndicate does not surrender. Not here, not ever. They are extremely powerful, and they do not care if millions die in their attempt to escape punishment for what they have done. Remember, an EMP attack will not damage property with the blast. It will just turn off the electricity. Millions will die on the first day who need electricity to live, people on life support of some kind or another. The press will blame those deaths on Trump as well, but you will know the truth. And if surfing Twitter or Facebook has taught you anything this weekend, you should be thoroughly educated now that the police are not here to protect you. You got to do that yourself. So lest this gets too dark and too low frequency, I try to avoid that as much as I can because in here the results are always positive. And I have friends on the West Coast who are listening right now, and they want me to make sure that you know that higher vibrational powers are at work, and they're being detected. They are. Scott, good to see you out there. I knew he was being unusually quiet. It's true, but I'm going to explain to you why. So let me just finish this one segment, and then I'll tell you exactly why Trump is being so quiet. It's all part of what I said in April, on Easter Sunday, as a matter of fact. No, they're good vibes. They're good vibes. Earth, the planet, is pulsing the name of God. Yeah. While the pulse of millions of Americans is running high in the wake of U.S. presidential election, here's something that could calm you down. Planet Earth is throbbing every 26 seconds. And while scientists are mystified by the beat, some rabbis believe it has to do with the name of God. In October, Popular Mechanics reported, and I quote, "Why is Earth pulsating every 26 seconds? And why can't scientists explain it after 60 years? This is an enigma wrapped in a periodically predictable mystery motion. Could be a harmonic phenomenon, a regular seismic chirp caused by the sun's energy, or a beacon drawing scientists to its source to begin a treasure hunt." In the early 1960s, a geologist named Jack Oliver first documented this pulse, also known as a microseism, according to Discover. Oliver, who worked at Columbia University's Lamont Doherty Geological Observatory at the time, heard the noise, but didn't have the advanced instruments seismologists now have at his disposal. Now, Israel 365 News is taking another look at this phenomenon. This is its report. The mystery remained, and scientists ignored the microseisms until 1980, when Gary Holcomb, a geologist with the U.S. Geological Survey, discovered they are strongest during storms. It was studied once again in 2006 in Geophysical Research Letters, but the cause is still unknown. Some scientists conjecture that subtle seismic activity is constantly present as a result of the sun's warming effect on the planet. 2013, graduate student Garrett Euler narrowed down the source of the pulse even more to a part of the Gulf of Guinea called the Bight of Bonny, leading him to a conjecture the source was indeed the result of ocean waves hitting the coastline. But in the same year, a team led by Yingji Xia from the Institute of Geodesy and Geophysics in Wuhan, China, suggested that the source of the pulses was a volcano on the island of Sao Tome in the Bight of Boni. Both theories leave as many questions as answers. There is no death of volcanoes or beaches in the world, so why are the microseisms limited to that one site? Why the intervals? Why 26 seconds? Well, the website explains, when presented with the mystery, rabbis all recognize that the 26-second phenomenon is the earth dancing out praise for its creator. The 26-second duration of the microseism pulse is explained by the gematria, Hebrew numerology of God's name, spelled out by the Hebrew letters Yod, He, Va, He. It equals 26. In English, the name of God has been transliterated as Yahweh, with the meaning often rendered as I am, which carries the value of 26. Rabbi Lazar Brody, an American-born Hasidic rabbi who teaches on the Lazar Beams blog, says the 26-second pulse of Earth is inspiring. There are so many secrets, places where we can discover Hashem, God, literally the name. Brody tells Israel 365 News, I focus on simple faith, and science is just a different part of that. That sentiment is echoed by Rabbi Shlomo Katz of the congregation Shirat David in Ephrat, Israel. It is very consoling, Katz told Israel 365 News. In these last stages, before the Quela, the final redemption, it is clearly important to be in tune, even literally, with the planet. Being religious, being close to Hashem, is much more than just what goes on in church or synagogue, or what you read in a book. We need to be sensitive to the quest, to nature, to see how the entire world fits into God's plan. Science and nature have to be part of our conversation with God. God could have made the world in an infinite number of ways, but here we see that every detail is for his glory. Rabbi Shaul Judelman, former director of the Ecology Beit Midrash, told the website the Bible itself actually refers to what he called the earth dancing for the name, for Hashem. Why, mountains, did you skip like rams? Why, hills like lambs? Tremble, O earth, at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the God of Jacob. The sages were careful observers of nature, and that was where they discovered God. Judelman explains, they were very much in the world. Back then, that was science, observing nature and trying to understand it. There was no conflict between faith and science, absolutely the opposite. They complemented each other, delving into the world, nature, and how it works, revealed more of God. But we have fallen into a space where we think we have to destroy science to protect faith, or destroy faith to advance science. That isn't so. And in fact, we need both sides in order to grow and move towards Gela, or Gwela, the final redemption. Okay, so I promised that I would tell you why President Trump is being so quiet. In April, I revealed to you a plan that became known to me. Not the plan, not like trust the plan. I mean, I predicted that 5 or 6 states would refuse to issue their vote totals after the election. And this would prevent either candidate from reaching 270 electors. There would be no concession. There would be no clear winner at that point. If this was left in this condition, it would reach the deadline of January 20th. When January 20th is reached, the new Congress, not the Congress that's in seat now, but the Congress that is now elected, will take its place in Washington, and Congress will then, one state legislature at a time, not one congressman at a time. We no longer have 538 electors to worry about here, or 438 congressmen to worry about, plus or minus however the census has changed that a little bit. But the point is, each state, 50 states, 50 votes, one state legislature at a time. This is what the Founding Fathers figured out, that no matter how big the federal government became, and the bigger it would get, the more corrupt it would get, the real politics, the real core of the republic is the state legislature. That's the one that's closest to the people. Those are your neighbors that are your state congressman or your state senator. Not the U.S. one, but the one that's at your state house, just a few miles from where you live. These are the ones that are in touch with the people. Now, when it comes to this, 28 of those legislatures are controlled by Republicans, some of them with supermajorities, like we have here in North Carolina. The House and the Senate have a supermajority. The governor can veto something, and the House and the Senate can override that veto. That's how many Republicans there are in this state. It's the same in 28 states, or very close to it. That means only 22 states, actually only 20, because 2 states are independent or so closely balanced it doesn't matter. The point is that the Congress, under the 20th Amendment, selects the president. They select the president. When the electors cannot be seated and vote in a fashion to give one candidate 270 electors, or one over halfway, it's called a consensus. When that can't happen, then the state legislatures will appoint a president, will elect a president. I don't mean appoint, I mean they'll elect a president. The Senate will then be tasked with electing the vice president. Republicans also control the Senate. So what will happen, and I believe what Trump's plan was, if these states could not certify, if for some reason they stopped their count in the middle of the night, tossed all the Republican poll watchers out, and then resumed the count by rolling up the back doors and trucking in millions and millions of votes, tens of millions of votes, or using foreign equipment and software to alter the vote because they didn't like the results. Because election night, Donald Trump won the election. And I mean, he won like 403 electors. 403. It wasn't even close. You know that. I know that. Everybody knows that. You just look at the rallies, look at the Twitter accounts, look at everything there is to do with it. The incumbent Donald J. Trump controls this country. He's the president of this country. The reason Donald Trump has been quiet is because he knows that these 5 or 6 states have been caught. They have been caught manipulating their vote, and probably as many as 30 states, even though they claim to have called the election for one candidate or the other. That's because this software has been used and this hardware has been used. And it has been used to manipulate an election to fit the global syndicate. Forget about Biden. Biden is not a candidate. We're just talking about the global syndicate taking over the government of America. Biden has no ideas. Biden has no plan. Biden has no platform. Well, he does, but it's 47 years old, and it's the Biden platform. It's all about Biden and his family. That's not what the global syndicate wants. What they want is control. And that's what Donald Trump would not give them. So if it goes to the 20th Amendment, which I think is a very constitutional way to go, then President Trump will resume the presidency. He'll serve for 4 more years, and the Trump economy will continue. The tax credits will be made permanent, and all will be well with the world. All right, lots of good comments in the chat room. Let me continue. The global syndicate is not going to roll over and play dead. They know this plan as well as I do. And even though the 20th Amendment path has never been used in the United States, there's nothing to say that it could not be. There's nothing to say that we're prevented or protected from that happening. It is a plan. What they really wanted to do was control Congress so that that plan would work in their favor. But the Biden agenda was thoroughly rejected nationwide. They lost state legislatures. They lost congressmen. They lost Senate seats. They lost governors. The socialist agenda has been so thoroughly rejected across this country that now they can't pull off a victory under the 20th Amendment. The victory is in the hands of President Donald J. Trump. And I told you that the syndicate doesn't surrender. They have taken over many worlds this way. They've taken over a third of the host of heaven this way. It has always been this way. But they're not going to win this time. But if they can't win, they're going to make sure everybody loses. You've heard of this list, right? The list. Several media figures and Democrats have called for lists to be made of President Trump's supporters following the presidential election, suggesting that these lists will be used in the future to hold the president's supporters accountable. These lists could include the NRA. These lists could include AMAC, the senior citizens organization that sits opposite of the other senior citizen organization. They could include other mailing lists, and I will never give up my email list to anybody. I'll burn the place down before I do that. Eric, I get your thought. Eric says, my guess is limited nuclear war at sea, and when we are all, I don't know what that means, something, Russia and Turkey take Europe, especially Italy. It's a good board game, Eric. It's a good board game. But all this has been thought through to the very end. The only weapon that is actually effective toward causing a cascade like this would be an EMP weapon. The EMP weapon is an electromagnetic pulse weapon. It is designed to put tens of millions of volts into the air, and it's looking for a way to ground. What it finds are all of the power lines that we have stretched all over the cities. They're everywhere. When it finds these wires, just like the Carrington event in 1859, when the sun did just exactly that, put tens of millions of volts onto the airwaves or into the air, the telegraph wires, those were the only wires we had stretched anywhere. The telegraph wires picked up that voltage, ran it to the telegraph stations, and burnt them to the ground. Now, there was no microcircuitry in those days, but had there been, it would have certainly been destroyed, along with the cell phones and the chargers and the laptops, and everything connected to that grid would have been fried. Now we're an electronic society. Not just electric, but we're electronic. And so an EMP putting tens of millions of volts into the air is going to be picked up by every circuit, every conductor within its reach. Normally, if it's anything like the tests that we have run in the past, anywhere from 500 to 1,100 miles away from the blast, electronics will be affected. Now, obviously, the further away you get, the less voltage there is in the air, and maybe the damage won't be permanent, only temporary. But close to the blast, all kinds of microelectronics will be damaged. The other thing, and this is my fear because I have some knowledge of building large transformers. These transformers are filled with an insulative oil that has been deaerated. There's no air in it. It was poured and then vacuumed for several hours to get all the air out of it before it was sealed shut. That insulative oil is what sits in between the step-down coils, and in big transformers, they're plates, between the 161,000 volt wires that are stretched on the big high tension lines. It steps down in your local substation to 14,400 volts, and that 14,400 volts is distributed to your neighborhood where it is stepped down to 440, and then 220, and then that goes into your homes. Each time it's stepped down, the current goes up. Voltage times current. Yeah, okay, you get it, right? Voltage divided by current is resistance. So the higher the voltage, the smaller the wire. You got it. So unfortunately, when you have an EMP, those high tension lines, they're not the only antenna in town. The other lines that go around all the neighborhoods, down all the streets, in all the cities, those wires are antennas too. So they pick up the voltage and they run it back to the substation, but instead of stepping down, it steps up. It steps up. That 10 million volts gets launched up to about 40 million volts, 50 million volts. And what does it do to that oil? It jumps right through it. It jumps right through it, and it burns holes in the transformer plates themselves. It could even explode the transformer if it's close enough. Once that big transformer goes out, that 13,800 volt step-down transformer, 38,000 volt step-down transformer, auto taps they're called them. Once that's fried, there's no more power distribution. And it will take 1 to 2 years for an unaffected area, which could be in Germany or Switzerland or South America, an unaffected area, because the affected area runs on electricity. And if the plant that makes the transformers runs on electricity, you're pretty much hosed. It's got to be built in an unaffected area and then shipped to the area, installed in the substation. Then the systems are checked and brought back up. It could take a year or two. Now you, me, we can get by fine with a campfire, fishing, farming. We'll go back to rubbing 2 sticks together to make fire if we have to. But there are a lot of people that have to have that power to survive. They're on dialysis machines. They need blood transfusions. They need electronic monitoring of their blood sugar, all kinds of things. Tens of millions of people will die. Quick break. Go ahead and disconnect the studio and let them run their commercials. And then you and I will talk about what's going on in the chat room. So that's what makes this list important, by the way. And I'll get back to it as soon as we bring the studios back in. Yes, but what if your lines are underground? Underground, not going to be affected. Underground, not going to be affected. The voltage is not going to go down into the ground, get on the wires, and go in your neighborhood. You do have pad mount transformers in your neighborhood, though. Even with underground utilities, the pad mount transformers sit in the yards. They're the green or gray pad mount transformers that sit along the sidewalk. That's what steps the electricity down for your house. There's usually one every other house or one every 4 houses. They can be affected. More than likely, what will be affected are the wires in your home that are connected to all your electronic equipment. Your computer, your TV, any kind of cell phones you have, all that'll be affected if you're close to the affected area. If you're outside that affected area, there's a chance those things will survive, but the cell phone towers are definitely going to be affected. The point is that this is kind of a weapon that is used to attack infrastructure. It's not necessarily to attack people. People will not be affected by this directly. It's also a weapon without fingerprints. Once the weapon goes off, it's very difficult to tell where the weapon came from or who fired it. The other thing is, Resto Man, it probably won't burn houses down, but it could. It depends on, because the wires in your houses, if they're modern houses, use wire that meets NMB code. NMB code means that these wires can take up to 600 volts, and you don't have that much wire in your house. Maybe 100 yards or a couple hundred yards of wire. Not enough of an antenna. It's more than the short circuits, the little integrated circuits and circuit boards that will be affected. The very delicate things. Chances are your house will not burn down. The electricity is not going to go in that direction. It will tend to go toward ground. And the grounds in the homes are the telephone lines, telephone poles are grounded. The ground circuit that makes up your home is very well grounded. You have a rod that's pounded into the ground near your house. near your electrical box, and that grounds your circuit. So chances are your houses will not burn down. Capacitors can be overloaded for sure. This is a gaming channel. I realize DLive is a gaming channel. But we are building a podcast folder at DLive. When I first started on DLive, there were only a few of us, maybe a half a dozen or a dozen or so. Because YouTube took the actions that it took recently, it has forced a lot of us. Oh, let me go and bring the studio back in. It has forced a lot of us to look for other platforms. And so we have added DLive and Twitch. So we've added DLive and Twitch because there are other platforms that give us kind of a safety net. So if YouTube chooses to kick me off of YouTube because I speak too much truth that's not conducive to their community, then we have a landing place. And that's why me and Red Pill 78 and Space Shot and Ardoc and all these other great minds that are out there speaking the same things or better things than I do, we have found places to be. So move over, gamers. We're coming. We're coming. Because podcasting is a good outlet for DLive. And DLive is really, really, really beginning to grow right now. So, right. I am not a game, and I don't apologize for that. Justin the Great, or Justinian the Great, says some people are selling anti-EMP devices that are supposed to be able to break the circuit before your stuff gets fried. Any merit to those? These are surge protectors. They can work, but junky ones are not going to protect your stuff. The best thing to do is, if you are not using a piece of electronics, is to unplug it. And pull the power cord out of the back of it, so the power cord itself can act like an antenna as well. Then when you get ready to use it again, plug it back in and use it. But we leave stuff plugged in our home all the time. I was sitting in my office one time and there was a lightning storm outside. I was working on something at my desk. The lightning hit a ways away. It ran in through the phone line, went into my modem and snapped it like a .22 caliber pistol going off. It was crazy. It didn't hurt my computer, but it fried that modem, just exploded it on the inside of my PC. That was really weird. I should have had the phone line disconnected during the thunderstorm, but I didn't. Now that's a high current signal. What we're talking about here is high voltage. The reason high voltage is bad is because the insulation for the circuits in your equipment are only made for a certain amount of voltage. 120 volts, 220 volts, 600 volts, something like that. They're not built for 1,000,000 volts. It's low current, but it's still high voltage, and it will jump the insulation, and that's what compromises the electronics. It's sort of like when you're working with an Arduino board and you're building circuits, you wear on your wrist a conductor, and then this is connected to ground. And what that does is it siphons off the static electricity that builds up on your hands. That way, when you reach down to, set a transistor or something, or a diode or something on that board, you don't introduce 25, 30,000 volts to your circuit and fry it. I'm just saying, that's just the static electricity that builds up on your hands. So it can be significant. A heavy-duty surge projector is always a smart idea. We get power surges all the time, and they're designed, especially if they have Zener diodes inside of them, they're very sensitive. they can break the circuit. If they know that an EMP is coming, like they get an imminent threat, they can go to the substations and they can pull the bus bars. The bus bars are these big aluminum bars about the size of my wrist, and they connect the high voltage side to that transformer. They can throw open the bus bars. And what this does, it breaks the circuit in the substation and protects the transformer from being a ground. And that way it keeps the transformer from blowing up. Most substations have at least 2 circuits. That is to say, they have 2 transformers. And what they do is they take one offline periodically and they do preventive maintenance to it. They clean the contacts. They calibrate the power meters, which are 0 to 1 volt or 0 to 10 volts, and then they send a signal to the power station. That's how they control the auto tap transformer. All these circuits are rechecked, recalibrated, contacts are cleaned, and then it stands by the ready. And then when this transformer needs to be PM'd, they switch transformers. When that happens, you have an offline transformer. So most substations have 2 circuits. In this way, there's a possibility that some of it will be spared. Yes, laptops unplugged, absolutely unplugged. And they now make copper mesh bags. Now, some of them are, you've seen them before, where circuit boards come in and when you mail a circuit board, it prevents the circuit board from being damaged. You can buy bags to put your laptop in, and then there's a snap on the bag, and then you connect that to ground. And then what that does, it protects your laptop. That's the way we did in the military. When we harden things, that's what we do. Yes, Brasshopper says he worked on the Abrams EMP proofing harnesses. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. Transformers are more than meet the eye. Absolutely, absolutely. The bigger they are, the wilder they are to watch being made. Let me tell you, those big stainless steel plates, they're crazy. What is this? I have a lightning pole. What kind of transformer can I hook it up to? I don't know. I had a friend of mine one time who had a farm out in Arizona, and he wanted to take advantage of the voltage that was in the air. So he set up a perimeter of poles around his property, and he ran copper wire around and around. It took him a long time because copper is expensive. He ran it around and around and around and around, and he had a constant 300 to 400 volts on that wire at all times. Now, it wasn't enough to run his house, but it was interesting. If he had enough copper wire, he probably could have sat there and just collected free energy just from the energy that's in the air. RRS says, I want to hear your opinion about the protection against the election that Trump says is rigged. Well, in the first hour, I talked about the executive order that was put in place in 2018. The election was rigged. It was rigged to destroy. It was rigged to switch the election over to the global syndicate. The issue, or I guess the safety, was that all of the infrastructure was already known about, and it was all being monitored. And they kind of knew what they had to do. After election night was over and the physical votes came in, and they realized that they were about 900,000 votes behind in Pennsylvania and all the other states, actually, what they did is they stopped the count. They ejected the Republican poll watchers, locked the doors, rolled up the back doors, and brought ballots in by the millions, tens of millions. And then they added those votes to the count. The other thing that happened, besides the physical addition of the votes, was the deletion of Trump totals electronically and the switching of votes from Trump categories to Biden categories, and the manipulation of the tally in Germany on the Skytel servers. Now, the Dominion software is designed using a piece of software. A Dominion system uses a piece of software called Scorecard. Scorecard was developed by DARPA to attack the elections of other countries so that we would force the election of people that we wanted to have run that place. The CIA was using it in other countries. And so what happened was Scorecard was incorporated into the Dominion system. It was immediately problematic because these states, they're smart. They have smart people working for them, people like me, people younger than me and smarter than me, whatever. Anyway, they would run experiments. They would run trials. And they would say, I can hack this thing in 2 minutes. It's easy. I don't even need special tools to do it. And so some states said, well, we're not using that system. We're using a safe and secure system because we want to certify our vote. We don't want any shenanigans in our state. That was 20 states did that. 30 states decided to use the Dominion system, which included the scorecard. Now, what scorecard does specifically is when a voting machine fills up with votes, after it scans a whole bunch of ballots, the memory of the actual machine itself is full or close to full. It does a data dump. It does a data transfer. Supposed to be an intranet. Inside that precinct, there is a network. And what happens is those voting machines take their total and they upload it to a data storage in the building. Unfortunately, and in total violation of all election protocol, many of these machines, especially in Pennsylvania, were not connected to an intranet. They were connected to the internet. They were connected to the web. And what this allowed the scorecard software to do is between the transfer from the machine to the data storage unit, it would flip some of the votes. Not a whole lot at one time, 200, 300, 400, 500 votes at a time. Not enough to really alert somebody. It didn't happen in the fourth or fifth a significant figure, but it happened in low amounts, each transfer. Now, in a lot of these states and a lot of these countries, elections are so close because they don't have two parties, they have like 13 parties, right? And so the winner might only get 12% of the vote. But the winner and second place can only be separated by maybe 2,000 votes. That's where scorecard shines because it can manipulate small amounts of votes between the machine and data storage. Except that there were so many votes. I would say upwards of 74 to 76 million people voted for Donald Trump. You're hearing a number like 71 million. That's what's known. I'm telling you that the number was really between 74 and 76 million. They flipped upwards of 3 million, between 2.7 and 3 million votes they robbed from Trump. Some of them were just deleted because they were bringing in ballots in the back door, and they didn't want to have more ballots than you actually have people, so they had to delete some votes, which they did. Now they have paper ballots to back it. And in a lot of cases, they threw away the envelopes that the ballots came in, so now they can't validate where or when that ballot arrived. And that was by design. That was on purpose. So what's going to happen is lawsuit after lawsuit and legal step after legal step, and the freezing of these assets by the U.S. Treasury is going to prevent these 6 states from being able to certify their votes, which means neither candidate is going to get 270 electors, which means by the time it reaches January 20th, we're in the area of the 20th Amendment. The 20th Amendment says that the legislatures, the state legislatures, one vote per state, they will then elect the president, and Senate will elect the vice president. So Trump and Pence will be put back in, and there's no way around it. There's just no way around it. The miscalculation on the part of the global syndicate was that they would take these millions of votes and mark Biden, but they didn't vote the down ticket. They didn't vote the down ticket. They just voted for Biden. The problem is, for them, that the Republicans took a lot of congressional seats. They took a lot of mayors. They took a lot of state senators and state congressmen. They took city councils. They took district attorneys. And yes, they took congressmen. And so now what's happened is the global syndicate has found themselves without elected support. They're without elected support. When we get to this next Congress, this 2021 Congress, it's not the 2020 Congress, it's the 2021 Congress that'll be doing this voting. There's no legislative support for their agenda. You'd like to think they're going to lose, but I can tell you right now, the global syndicate does not lose. They don't lose. They never surrender. The only way to have victory is when your opponent surrenders, right? Right? I mean, they're, I suppose, checkmate, yes, if in a civilized game, if they don't draw a weapon. But that's where these lists are coming in. And these lists are nefarious, and they're no joke. They have been done before. I'm with you. Angelo says release the Kraken. I believe that they will. That's what could be coming. What is the Kraken? No, it's not a giant squid. I suppose the original Kraken was, but in this respect, it is a multi-tentacled beast of incredible power. And there are several things that are going to happen here. And this is a good scenario. Let me see if I got enough time to talk this out. Yes, I do. And by the way, the phone lines are open, so if you want to call in, I will most assuredly just love to have a phone call on this. But what will happen is the vote is going to be certified for Donald Trump, which is immediately going to cause a media explosion. I mean, a media explosion. But they have already discredited themselves by appointing or claiming that Biden won more votes than Barack Obama. Insert laugh track right here. Insert the laugh track. Laugh better than that. Yeah, Biden won more than a Barack Obama, right? Guy can't even fog a catheter. They have lost the PR war. And I have a feeling they're doing themselves irreparable damage here. The other thing is that they don't really have good candidates to pull it off. There's no charismatics here. And don't talk to me about Heels Up Harris. You know, Harris made the claim that she's the first person of color to be elected as vice president. And that's just not true. With numerous news outlets prematurely announcing the victory of Democrats, progressives everywhere are incessantly cheering on the election of the woman many believe to be the first vice president of color in American history. And that is actually not true. That honor actually goes to Charles Curtis. He is a Republican who served under the former president, Herbert Hoover, another engineer who ran for president. He was the 31st vice president, Charles Curtis was. He served from 1929 to 1933. Curtis was born to a white father and 1/4 Kaw Indian mother. During the early part of his life, Curtis was raised in North Topeka, Kansas, where he split time living between the white and Native American communities there, according to the U.S. Senate website. I quote, "The son of Orrin Curtis, a white man, and Ellen Poppin, who was 1/4 Kaw Indian, Charles Curtis, on his mother's side, was the great-great-grandson of White Plume, a Kansas Kaw chief who had offered assistance to the Lewis and Clark expedition in 1804. White Plume's daughter married Louis Gonville, a French-Canadian fur trader, and their daughter, Julie Gonville, married Louis Papin. Before returning to Topeka for school and discovering his passion for politics, Curtis spent much of his childhood with his maternal grandparents after the death of his mother. Curtis spoke French and Kansas and, of course, English. Kansa is the Siouan language of the Great Plains before he learned English. So, neither is Elizabeth Warren nor Kamala Harris the first Native American or people of color to run for vice president. Also, well, this kind of goes along with what you're talking about in the chat room. I call this the fraud. The American public has been inundated with experts on voting who are working overtime to convince us that voter fraud is a myth and can't be committed on the massive scale that has been claimed by President Trump and his supporters. More and more whistleblowers, like an election worker in Detroit who was told to backdate ballots, and former Democrat Governor Rod Blagojevich, are stepping up and proving that the Democrats' media narrative about voter fraud being a myth is an absolute bald-faced lie. From the New York Post, a top Democrat operative says voter fraud, especially with mail-in ballots, is no myth. And he knows this because he's been doing it on a grand scale for decades. The political insider, who obviously speaks on condition of anonymity, he fears prosecution, said fraud is more the rule than the exception. His dirty work has taken him through the weeds of municipal and federal elections in Patterson, Atlantic City, Camden, Newark, Hoboken, and Hudson County, and his fingerprints can be found in local legislative, mayoral, and congressional races across the Garden State of New Jersey. Some of the biggest names and highest office holders in New Jersey have benefited from his tricks, according to campaign records. An election that is swayed by 500 votes, 1,000 votes, it can make all the difference in the world. The whistleblower, whose identity, rap sheet, and long history working as a consultant to various Democrat campaigns were confirmed. He says he not only changed ballots himself over the years, but led teams of fraudsters and mentored at least 20 operatives in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania, a critical 2020 swing state. He says there is no race in New Jersey, from city council to the United States Senate, that we haven't worked on. I worked on a fire commissioner's race in Burlington County. The smaller the race, the easier it is to do. The ballot has no specific security features like a stamp or a watermark, so the insider said he could just make up his own ballots, which is exactly what I said would happen in April. Ballots R Us would simply print up pre-voted ballots. All they needed was signatures, if those were required, and they could be sent in. And as long as the envelope was kept separate or destroyed, then it wouldn't even matter when they came in. They could come in 2 days, 3 days, a week, 10 days later, and they would have to count. The return envelopes are actually more secure than the ballot. You could never recreate the envelope. So they just got rid of it. He would have his operatives fan out, going house to house, convincing voters to let them mail completed ballots on their behalf. The fraudster and his minions would then take the sealed envelopes home, hold them over boiling water, open them up, put another ballot inside of them, and off they would go. They did it by the thousands. The tipster said sometimes postal employees are in on the scam, which, by the way, the United States Postal Service endorsed Joe Biden to be president, so he had an obvious conflict of interest there. They went to nursing homes. They went to apartment complexes with the elderly, and they helped them fill out their absentee ballots, and it was a gold mine of votes. They've been doing it in California for years and years and years. When they got caught, all the governor did was just make it legal. So in California, it's illegal to do. They would also buy votes. They just bribed the voter. The tipster said New Jersey homeless shelters offered a nearly inexhaustible pool of reliable, viable votes. And that's what they did. Let's see, ballots they could buy for roughly $174 a vote. In Minnesota, they were buying them for $200 a vote. With federal laws warning of prison sentences up to 5 years, busted voter frauds have seen far less punishment, I can assure you. While in 2018, a Texas woman was sentenced to 5 years, an Arizona man busted for voting twice in the mail was given just 3 years probation, not even served a day. A study by the Conservative Heritage Foundation found more than 1,000 instances of documented voter fraud in the United States, almost all of which occurred over the last 20 years. The Trump campaign on Thursday won a case attempting to disqualify a small number of mail-in ballots for first-time Pennsylvania voters who were unable to confirm their identification by November 9th. The fraud was so big on so many different levels in so many different states that this election, I believe, has been tainted beyond recovery. So when Sidney Powell talks about the Kraken, she's not only talking about calling the election as of 8 o'clock or the closing of each poll on election night, which means Donald Trump won 40 states. 40 states. But all those people that were involved, and there are hundreds of them, will all be arrested and all be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. It'll be years before they get out. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. We'll wait for the break music to start. Should start in a second, and I will mute the studio. Hate to do that to you, TFR folks. I will try to come back in right on the opening music as we did in the last break. So hang in there. We'll be right back. We're at the halfway point. Don't go away. More X Squared Radio right after this. Okay. So let's go back to the chat room, see what questions are in there. Wow. Look at all the people in here. This is great. Yeah. Of course Kamala's an adulteress. Absolutely. That's why we call her Heels Up Harris. Good call, Alan. 7P says, I don't like the name Hoover. Why is that? Because the Democrats always talk about the Hoover economy. Hoover was president right before the Great Depression. Okay? What happened was the policies that were going on at that time caused the economy to really begin roaring. And the middle class was coming on strong. Unfortunately, in those days, it was not illegal for banks to be involved in the stock market. And so banks would take depositors' money and they would invest the money in the stock market. You couldn't lose. The stock market was just going wild. Nobody could lose. I mean, stocks were going up and up and up and up, just like they are now. Big difference was, in those days, the bankers were in cahoots so deep with Congress that Congress allowed the bank not only to buy stocks, but to margin them. That is to say, if the bank had $1, they could margin $10 worth of stocks. Yeah. They did not have to have a cash reserve to cover the losses because there were no losses until there were. Once the global syndicate decided to crash the money supply in 1929, what happened was the banks could not meet the call. They couldn't meet the call, so they just closed the doors, and they stole all the middle class's money. The middle class evaporated overnight. All you had at the end of 1929 were billionaires, the equivalent of billionaires, and poor people. That's it. The middle class was gone. They were gone. People that owned their homes in 1929 were renting their homes in 1930. And so what happened when the Hoover presidency was completely destroyed by the global syndicate, absolutely wiped out. They destroyed the world. They destroyed the world to beat the middle class. They just didn't want the middle class to come on and start playing in their sandbox. When Franklin Delano Roosevelt came in 1933, the very first thing he did was begin setting up a fascist government immediately. And he made no bones about it. One of his best pen pals was Mussolini. And he set up a fascist government. Agencies, departments, bureaus, administrations. In 1935, he needed a special police force to protect the interests of the Democrat Party. Because Congress and the Senate were gunning for him. The Supreme Court was gunning for him. They knew what he was doing, and they wanted to stop him. So he created the FBI in 1935 to protect the interests of the Democrat Party, and they've been doing that ever since. Ever since. The FBI was founded in corruption, and they remain in corruption, and they cannot be trusted. We'll bring the studio back in right now.
I've been waiting for this moment since my first breath in. Never would have thought I'd be afraid to begin, but here I am, the edge of the water, wondering if I can swim. Never seem to notice all the days pass through, but in this final moment, I'm still chasing the truth. I want an explanation why I can't stay here forever in my youth. And if I press on, will you wait? Will you wait for me forever? Or would it be wrong to ask you to come away? Tell me, will you wait?
So that's what's going on right now, and I want to assure you that war is justice denied. And so justice will come. Justice will come. That's what releasing the Kraken means. So, Soldier of God says, should we invest in gold or silver? That is a trick question because you don't invest in silver or gold. They are what's called storage metals. Now, here's what I tell people. This is what I do myself, okay? If I have money in the bank and it's sitting there month after month and I try to leave a little cush in there, for a rainy day, whatever, I'm making all my bills and I don't have to borrow money. I make sure, on average, 25% of my cash, of my liquid cash on hand, is in silver because it's a storage metal. You don't invest in silver with the intention of making money. Investing in metal is a hedge. That means that you're hedging against bad times. For instance, runaway inflation. With runaway inflation, the metal never changes value. It just stays the same value. It's the dollar that changes value. I mean, it doesn't matter. An ounce of gold will buy the same today as it did in 1900. It just will. Only in rare occasions, like during the Depression, when, the dollar fell to, where it was worth nothing. I mean, there was just no money. People worked for 75 cents a day and all the potatoes they could carry home. An ounce of gold would buy a lot more than maybe at other times. But that's because the dollar and the metal was so far off. But the metal never loses its value. However, it isn't an investment. Now, obviously, if I need to have cash for something, like I want to go buy a motorcycle or I want to go buy a new computer, if I don't have the cash on hand or I don't want to burn the liquid cash on hand, I just go to my safe, open it up, pull out some silver bars, and if my computer dealer won't take the silver bars, I just go to the pawn shop, convert the bars into cash, and go buy the computer. In that respect, the metal is liquid enough. It's currency. It's the same thing. It's the same as currency. But it's not the same as currency if the dollar is somehow corrupted. In other words, if the federal government were to come to us and say, you know what? There's just too much counterfeit cash out there. We just can't trust the money supply. We just don't know. We're seeing 1s and 5s and 20s, and it's just corrupt. So we need all those people out there that are holding on to money, Like right now there's a big coin shortage, right? It's my fault. My fault. I have an R2D2 bank. It's full of quarters. It's my fault there are no quarters in Concord. But that's what it could be like with paper money. With paper money, the federal government can say our paper money is corrupted. We're going to have to generate new script. So you need to take all your cash back to the bank and deposit it in your account. Well, there's an issue there because about 20% of our country, they don't have bank accounts. They work for cash. They deal in cash. They pay their rent in cash. They buy their gas, their groceries, everything in cash. They don't have bank accounts. A significant number of them are illegals. They don't belong here. They can't get a bank account because they don't have a birth certificate. You just can't get one. So those people are in trouble because they don't have a bank account to take the money to. They're going to have to launder it through somebody like me. If they bring me $20,000, I could say, well, yeah, I'll take the $20,000 to the bank for a cut, right? That's what's going to happen. There'll be black market people trying to take care of the cash. So then the federal government issues new cash. But in the meantime, what do you do? Well, if you have 25% of your cash holdings in metal, you've got the new currency already. You have the new currency. You can trade in silver or gold. So the answer to your trick question is yes. You should buy silver or gold, depending on what your budget is. My budget's a silver budget because I'm frugal. I was going to say cheap. I'm not. I'm frugal. Silver's $26 an ounce, and gold is about $1,800 an ounce. I like the weight of the silver bars. I don't like these little bitty gold coins. And besides, experience has told me, people won't kill you for silver. They just won't. They will kill you for gold. It's a weird, crazy metal. So my recommendation, what I do for me, is silver. It's just good. You can buy them in 1, 5, or 10 ounce bars. Yes, gold is worth $1 per 1/10 ounce, and you can buy food for a week from me for that $1. That's interesting. Gold has always been currency, whether the dollar is based on it or not. Gold is currency. Silver rounds are good. Yes, they're good. They're approximately 1 ounce of silver. And you also can only be taxed on the face value of the dollar. So if you're ever caught with it or have to spend it, you can only be charged for the dollar. But I just don't like the rounds. Too small for me. I deal in the 5 and 10 ounce bars. They stack easier. They look better in the safe. And that's just my choice. Soldier of God, good advice though. Silver rounds, good way to go. The silver bars are just pristine clean, not a scratch on them. They're beautiful. And Wild Boar 3000 says it's Trump's fault. Of course it is. It's always the fault of people that do stuff. Always the fault of people that do stuff. All right. Now, let's talk about this war that's going on. I often say war is justice denied. When Obergefell versus Hodges on his gay marriage ruling came down in 2015, Barack Obama said, and this is an interesting quote because he reused it again this week, "Justice arrives like a thunderbolt." But of course, nothing that defies the law of God is just. And Obama is a liar. Indeed, it could be said of Obama and all his election-stealing partners and their minions that they epitomize what Jesus said in John 8:44. I quote, "They belong to their father, the devil, and they want to carry out his desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, refusing to uphold the truth because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language because he is a liar and the father of lies." Close quote. Lying is the language of the global media empire, and that includes big tech. And they've been speaking almost exclusively since Trump became president, deliberate falsehoods, misrepresentations, distractions, diversions, suppression of dissent, amplification of false witnesses, accusations that truth tellers are guilty of exactly the crimes they themselves are committing, and multifaceted, multidimensional coordination of this campaign with a vast network of co-conspirators. We are literally witnessing corruption of biblical proportions. Nothing the devil does is creative. He can only spin counterfeit alternatives to what God has created and try to preempt God's plan by putting his counterfeit out first or loudest, like Obama did. You know, when Lucifer and God were talking about the Garden of Eden, Adam was being built out of the dirt of the earth. And Lucifer said, well, that's easy enough. I can do that. And God said, really? Well, let's see what you got. And so Lucifer reached out and grabbed up a bunch of dirt, and God said, whoa, hold on a second here. You could get your own dirt. See? Just this morning, former CIA intelligence analyst and strong Trump supporter Larry C. Johnson published a highly persuasive article, and it suggested that Attorney General Bill Barr is about to bring the hammer down on the crooks behind the election fraud. And then, of course, articles appeared later in the day that said Bill Barr's not going to do anything. He ain't finding fraud. Nothing wrong. Everything's been examined. Everything's fine. Nobody broke any laws. Conservatives have grown increasingly frustrated with Barr over the past few months for what they perceive as a reluctance to take action over the obvious alleged criminal conduct of the anti-Trump conspirators. Of course, I agree, but on the other hand, you have to weigh this with what's called the rule of forbearance. It doesn't exist in the Constitution per se. It is more in the Federalist Papers, but it basically means, look, you're the president, and you control the Department of Justice. You control the head of the FBI. You control all the intelligence agencies. You cannot use these, you must not use these powers to attack your political opponents. Not for about 3 months before the election, nor a month after the election. It's called the rule of forbearance. It allows for the peaceful transfer of power from one candidate to the other. But of course, as I've said on this program, Obama violated the rule of forbearance. He violated the rule of forbearance because that is exactly what he did. He used the FISA court to sabotage the Trump administration. He did exactly what Lucifer would do. If the Justice Department is to tackle the biggest politically motivated criminal conspiracy in American history, it cannot itself be tainted with the perception of political bias in the administration of justice, hence the frustration. Of course, nothing will prevent the left from insisting that the prosecution of their fellow travelers is political, right? But whatever fair-minded people are left in this country will almost certainly consider Bill Barr's refusal to bring charges before the election as a pretty solid defense of that charge, right? He is obeying the rule of forbearance. He didn't do what James Comey did in attacking Hillary Clinton a couple of months before the election, right? Remember the October surprise when he brought this all back up about Hillary's emails? There's also the reality of the prosecutor worldview, which I don't know if you guys really grasp that or not, but let me share this with you. Veteran prosecutors who handle big criminal conspiracy cases, like Rudy Giuliani, Rudy did in the mafia cases, right? These big RICO cases in the 1980s. They live in a world where there's actually just one chance to cast their net. And so they want to ensure, because if they don't, if they catch this guy and then go catch this guy and then, go catch, those guys aren't going to be there anymore, right? They're going to be dead. They're going to commit suicide in prison. They're going to escape with their getaway cash. You're not going to get them. They're going to buy a mansion in Martha's Vineyard, a $14.5 million mansion. They're going to go on a speaking tour. They're going to run for office, and you can't touch them. You have one chance to catch them. And you got to catch as many co-conspirators as possible when they finally pull the trigger. As soon as they act, the whole network is going to scatter, right? They're going to scatter like roaches into cracks and holes where they start destroying evidence as fast as possible. You know that. You know that, right? Prosecutors also want the net to include the big guys. They don't want to get the hitmen. They don't want to get the bagmen, Hunter Biden. They want to get the big guys. They want to get the top crooks who are actually the masters at ensuring there's minimal evidence of their involvement, right? Plausible deniability. Getting the goods on them, it takes time. It takes time to put it together. It takes careful, clandestine time to keep enough people alive so that you can get them all. And in the matter of the great election theft of 2020, this conspiracy is much, much bigger than what the Durham investigation uncovered, and its ultimate object, the theft of the presidency by voter fraud, needed to play out to fruition, which was technically this week, right? The last day in North Carolina of late voting counting of all the Democrat vote by mail counting extensions. Today, the conspiratorial effort, crime itself, is complete as to the evidence of voter fraud in all its myriad forms. There's certainly evidence still being uncovered, but the big stuff is known. The big actors are known. The servers are grabbed. Everything is known. And there's another aspect I want to bring to your attention, and that is the shock and awe strategy of Donald Trump when it comes to proving his case to the public. That's why he's golfing. That's why he's being quiet. That's why he's not tweeting. I first explained it back in, I think, June. It works like this. First came the prediction of the mother of all bombs, right? About to fall on the enemy. And, it was Hunter's laptop. It was one thing after another, and all this was in Trump's possession. And then a series of single-bite, lesser impact breaking stories. One hit after the other after the other. It was like drops of acid dropping on their heads. These were bait. These were bait to start all the leftist pundits jumping to Hunter Biden's defense on the grounds that the evidence was weak, and it was meritless. There was nothing to see here. Everything was fine. Nothing impropriety about it. Improprietous. And then, once all their necks were in the noose, the storm clouds opened and the deluge began. All they could do was seek cover while pretending the storm was a hoax. And then came the coup de grace in the form of photos and videos so shocking and so salacious they drew every eye in America to see the evidence for themselves, exposing the leftist media and the tech giants as the liars literally caught in the act. Trump has set them all up again. With the election and fraud scandal, with the executive order put in place in 2018, you mark my words, this storm is going to be huge. Huge, and lots of bad guys, hundreds of them, are going to be held accountable for their crimes and their lies. So pop some corn, warm your feet by the fireplace, and get ready for the lightning show of a lifetime. Justice denied is war. All right, I have a caller, been out there for about 16 minutes. We got about 8 minutes in this hour. Emily, what is on your mind?
Hello.
Hi.
Aren't you nice? Hi, how are you? I'm Emily, and I'm in California.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So what's going on in California?
Uh-huh. Well, what's going on? What's going on is that I'm an old person, and I remember when my uncle Eugene Dennis was jailed for violating the Smith Act of 1940, and the Smith Act had to do with advocating the overthrow of the settled government.
That's right. Acts of
and
sedition.
I'm wondering whether this deep state, in its coup to overthrow the settled government, hasn't qualified itself for being prosecuted under the Smith Act.
It's possible. A lot of these prosecutions, you want to avoid the appearance of political motivation, especially close to an election. And I think that's why they wanted harder evidence. When you participate in the creation of, transportation of, funding of, or facilitating fake votes, or the manipulation of a federal election, and you can be caught in that act, it's way, way less political. Now it's not a vague interpretation about, it could be said Alex Jones was advocating the overthrow of the government. He wasn't, but it could be manipulated like that. The way I have been...
It's at three levels. It's at the level of counterfeit ballots, between 5 and 10 million counterfeit ballots that don't have the correct mark on them because they weren't printed by the DHS, and this was the sting that Trump arranged. It's the Dominion software that's designed to flip from one candidate to another, and it's in the battleground states where the staff on the polling sites are colluding with the coup itself. So 3 levels of the election have been overturned in terms of honesty, which says that the whole election is bogus. Okay, it's bogus. But under the Smith Act, the mainstream media that has been propping up all of this fraud falls in alignment with the coup also.
Well, it does.
And
you're absolutely right.
Academia, with their grants from China, funding, the social, what do they call it, critical race theory, and so on and so forth, are also falling in alignment with a coup, and that too would fall under the Smith Act. And so I'm just wondering why nobody's at least talking about the Smith Act.
It was a good question. The way federal law goes now, these more esoteric positions like the Smith Act are very difficult to make because basically what you're talking about are words, you're talking about positions, you're talking about something less concrete. That's why I call it esoteric. But when you get actual criminal activities like ballot harvesting or vote flipping, or when you have an executive order that comes in under a national emergency, like this executive order I talked about in the first hour, now you have something concrete.
Yeah.
And you can go after, according to the Secretary of Treasury, which uses the Secret Service, by the way, you can start going after the bank accounts of these people. And obviously, we get a lot of mileage when we get to go after bank accounts of George Soros and Steyer and Singer and Bloomberg and these people that have actually been financing the overthrow of the government. It's okay to, get the low guys or the guys, put them in jail for a little while like your relative, but when you can go after the kingpin, when you can go after George Soros and take all of his billions and put it back in the U.S. Treasury, George Soros will never be heard from completely again.
Yeah, I agree completely, but we do have the kind of the summary, the overarching charge that there is a coup in place.
Sure.
It's not just forgery. It's not just treachery. It's not just this or that. It's a whole intention. It's a summary intention of what the left is trying to do to this country.
To probably state the obvious, to probably state the obvious, there are a few voices, although they're very loud, Giuliani and Sidney Powell and Devin Nunes and others, who are actually talking using the word coup. They're not many voices, but they are loud and they're authoritative.
Well, I've been on Twitter all day. I've been Twitter all day using that word all over Twitter. Okay, and I don't just send it out to the world. I send it to specific individuals who are interested in the topic of coup, which means I'm sending out messages one to one all day long. I've been here since 9 o'clock this morning.
You looking for a job?
Oh, I'm a badass. I'm doing this for my grandchildren.
I need to hire a badass. I don't have time to do that. I'm still working, Emily. I have stuff I got to do with my life besides Twitter.
And that's why I do it, because I know you don't have time to do it. And Hannity doesn't have time, and Tucker doesn't have time, and Dan doesn't have time. So I do the dirty work,
Excellent.
I take out the garbage.
Excellent.
That's my job. That's what I do.
I think Trump Trump flipped a significant portion of California red, and it's nice to see these congresswomen winning their races out there in California. Very proud of them.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of us old grandmas who, I was born here and grew up here in the terrible California schools, and so there's a whole lot of work to be done now here. And I'm just delighted to listen to you talk. Thank you very much for your point of view. It relieves my heart. It makes me feel better.
Thank you so much for calling. It's so wonderful to hear your voice.
And you're so welcome, and I'll come by again.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll take a quick break here in a few seconds, and we will come back after this for our final hour. Don't go away. More X Squared Radio coming at you right after this. We'll address some of the questions in the chat room, so don't go away. You hang out. We'll be right back. Okay, let's see what's going on in the chat room. Wow, holy cow, look at all these people in here. William, good to see you out there. Yes, 20th Amendment, we did talk about it. Minnie Penny, hi, good to see you out there. I love all the people on D-Live. This is wonderful, wonderful. Thank you guys so much, and hopefully we have fixed the problem with D-Live, and tonight's program will actually be archived. So if you missed part of it, you can go back and listen to it on D-Live. And remember, it's a blockchain format, so you can participate in all kinds of different ways. Let's see what else we got out here. Delina, good to see you out there. Hello, Brooks and Human Family. I'm not going to say that on the air. Come on. Brian says, cool, we'll have to look up Ms. Arosh. Okay. Let's see. How often am I on the air? I'm on every Wednesday and every Sunday at 8 p.m. Okay, so I'm streaming live on all these platforms every Wednesday, every Sunday at 8 p.m. Wednesday for 2 hours and Sunday for 3 hours. Now, Sunday I take calls. Wednesday, I'm not set up to take calls yet. I'm still working on acquiring the equipment to be able to take calls because Wednesday night's network is not set up with a caller board. So I have to set it up here at my studio, and that takes a little bit more physical equipment, and I don't have it yet. Diane says, wouldn't POTUS know about the grid attack? Yes, he would know about it imminent, but he wouldn't know about the planning, but an EMP weapon is usually the first handshake in an attack. In the scenarios that I've painted out over the last couple of years, and I remember my briefings when I was in the Air Force, that an attack against the United States on American soil would have to be a surprise attack. You wouldn't want to, launch ICBMs and, wait for them. I mean, did all of you see the launch tonight? Did you watch the SpaceX launch tonight, along with like 270,000 other people? It was awesome. I just loved watching 4 astronauts go up to the space station. But it took time, right? It took like 5-6 minutes to get up there. And that's just to get up to low Earth orbit. Then you got to make the turn. Then you got to deploy the warheads. And point is, you have lots of warning, lots of time. There's time to strike back. There's times to strike at the warheads. We got all kinds of time. An EMP weapon would not be like that. Now, there's one of 3 ways to deploy an EMP weapon on the continental United States. The first would be to drop it from space. I don't think that they would do it in low Earth orbit. And the reason is because the blast would disrupt their satellites too. It would disrupt everything in space. But it could be deployed from space. It could be dropped from. Now, we know the North Koreans have 2 satellites. The Chinese have several satellites. Even the Iranians have a satellite. It could be dropped from one of those satellites. And in that case, the warhead would be so small and so cold, unless our radar was pointed right at it, we wouldn't see it. And being dropped from low Earth orbit, somewhere around, 180 kilometers up, 200 kilometers. It's not very far. It's just like right over there, just right over there. But up, you're already going around the Earth at about 18,000 miles an hour. So when you drop one of these little warheads, you don't even have to light it up. Just drop it. It will reach the planet in 2 minutes. 2 minutes. But you don't have to worry about it landing, because that's not what's going to happen. What will happen is this thing will blow up about 50 or 60,000 feet up, well before any nav aid, picks it up. Any kind of radar from any airport would pick it up. Once it goes off, the lights are out. At the speed of light, the lights are out, just like flipping a switch. When that happens, nobody gets a warning. And it's when it happens is the most important thing. When we were briefed on this in the Air Force, it was always going to take place during a night of celebration. New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve, sometime when the rest of the country is asleep. Just inattentive for a while. All the congressmen are home. Everybody's on vacation. Everything's shut down. There's nobody watching anything. NORAD is far away from being able to detect anything like this. A little tiny warhead without any kind of candle being lit drops, and 1 minute later it goes off. There's just, what can you do in 1 minute? You can do nothing in 1 minute. You can't go to the restroom and get back in bed in 1 minute. It's just not enough time to do anything, especially if it's during a night of reverie, July 4th or New Year's Day, or you know what I'm talking about, something like that. So when the EMP goes off, the lights go out. When the lights go out, we are blind. We get not making any calls. There's no radios working. No lights are on. We got bigger fish to fry with tons of stuff to do if the lights go out like that. And that gives cover for the second attack. Now, the second attack I've always maintained would be offshore, like a submarine. It could be sitting out there for a long time. The North Koreans have missile drones. Missile drones. They can come in stealthily, sit on the bottom for a couple years. Not even move. Sit there for a couple years. Nobody even knows it's there. And then at a predetermined time, because you can't communicate it with it when it's on the bottom, it's got to be a predetermined time, it just surfaces or gets close to the surface, launches the missile, it takes off toward its target, and within less than 6 minutes, it's on it. Unless it's a coastal target like command and control like Washington, D.C., or refineries in Texas or something like that. If it's onshore, 2 minutes, it's done. 2 minutes, finished. And once those weapons go off, and they don't even have to be nuclear, they just have to be accurate. You don't have the ability to do anything. That's the second wave. The third wave, once the command and control is upset or taken out or destroyed, once you target that zone, then the third wave is either dropped from aircraft that are already over your country or ICBMs that come in over the water, which is about 29 minutes in transit. And 29 minutes, cities can start disappearing. Now, the issue with that latter part is we have a source for the candles being lit, and we know where to hit back. We know who's launching at that point. Once that happens, there's a fail-safe counterattack, and it's devastating. It's called mutually assured destruction. But up until that moment, we do not know who hit us. Could be days before we know that. Days. And by then, we have bigger fish to fry. And they don't care. They don't care. Chinese don't care. If they lose 200 million people, if that's what it takes to kill 300 million Americans off, that is no sweat to them. I've already read you their position papers on this program. So do I think that's going to happen? I don't. I think it's a dark path, and I don't think it's going to happen. I think there are forces of light on this planet that are going to prevent that from happening. But everything up to that level, before the EMP goes off, could be deployed. I would never have thought that election fraud on this scale would ever take place. Oh, we've kind of always suspected it. I mean, a state or two here and there. I mean, we fought over Chads in Florida. We fought over, little stuff like that. Yes. But on this scale, but look what they had to do. Look what they had to do. Trump probably won between 74 and 76 million votes. Maybe as many as 80 million, but I'm thinking 74 to 76 million votes. You can't overcome that with voter fraud. The only way to do it is to delete 3-4 million votes of his and then add votes to Biden and then delay, and just keep cheating and keep it open, keep it undecided. They actually thought, I think their original plan was to keep it undecided and have a Congress which they would control by taking over more seats that they would then appoint or elect their own president. But it didn't happen, did it? It didn't happen. They focused so much on winning the presidency and winning the White House, they forgot to vote the down tickets. And now we've had all these Republican women win, and there's more to come. If another 5 or 6 votes, they're going to lose control over the committees. And once that happens, I fear that they will be losing. And so what has happened is, between the media wars, and that's what's going on right now in our country, is this propaganda war. And it's been going on for a long time, but now it has escalated to the point that it threatens the stability of the country, right? And they're coupling this with, oh my God, more people are being infected, more people than ever. It's the second wave, run for your lives. See what I'm saying? They want to put you in solitary confinement again. They want to make you afraid to go out. They want to close your restaurants and your bars and your gyms. They want to shut the country down again. And they're using the media to do that. Yes, I believe that too, William. William says Trump won between around 407 electoral votes. That is what I believe as well. Between 330 and 407 votes. And you are right. A cornered beast will bite. I don't know how to pronounce that. Aeouy. Is that like all the vowels and that's what it is? So we just call you Vowel Man? Yes, I believe that. I believe that exactly is what's going to happen. Yes, Governor Whitmer did that tonight. What did she do, Diane? What did Governor Whitmer do while I was on the air? Did she try to certify the Michigan vote? Yeah, it's not going to happen. But this is not mere media bias. Oh, she tried to lock it down. I see. Okay. This isn't media bias. This is a media war. This is media manipulation of public opinion and events. Okay? And it is part of the global media empire, which is a part of the global syndicate. Now, for months and months and months, the polls showed Joe Biden ahead. We all know that was total nonsense. They missed it by so much, it gives statisticians a bad name. I'm hurt by this, by these bad statistics. When I tell people I'm a statistician, they go, I'm so sorry. No, seriously, I'm a real mathematician, though, when it comes to this. So the point is, the last-minute revelations of his son Hunter Biden's role in potential money laundering and political corruption, it wasn't just, a Russian disinformation campaign. The anemic attendance at Biden's and Harris's rallies should have let everybody know. Just look at Biden's 18 million Twitter followers, which are mostly bots that they paid for, and Trump's 89.9 million Twitter followers. If you look at what we call the positive energy of that, because you have retweets and you have replies and you have followers. So when you look at the number of followers, then what we do is we look at the replies and we look at the retweets. And what you see with Trump's accounts, the people that follow him, the vast majority of them are retweets and hearts and positives. In other words, these are people that follow him and support him. With Biden, what you have are follows, but you have replies, and the replies are all negative. Now, what this reveals is that they're all bots. The bots don't put out hearts and retweets of positive things. They're just there. They have maybe 2 followers or 4 followers. We could check them out. But with Trump, most of his followers have 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 followers. And they don't reply so much as they do retweet and hearts. So when we look at the analysis of the different Twitter accounts, Trump is phenomenal. Trump is Twitter. If Trump were to close Twitter and move to whatever platform he wants to, TikTok or whatever, Twitter would have a major financial problem. Because you know where the followers would go? Yeah, they would go with Twitter. Just like when Joe Rogan left YouTube and went to Spotify. It was a major financial hit for them. They won't care when they kick me off. But see, panic may help you run faster and jump higher. But it really doesn't have any benefit on your thought processes. In fact, you make stupid decisions. And that's exactly what the Democrats are doing. Democrats threw all their corrupt people and processes into this battle. If they lost the states, they lose it all. And if they lost it all, they would probably lose most of the splinter groups they have been using to control their people for decades. BLM raised over $1.5 billion for the Democrat Party. Yeah, of course, now they're wanting their pound of flesh, right? They want their stuff. But Antifa, the same way. Patronage jobs, the special legislation for an ever-expanding number of political splinter groups like Antifa and BLM, these big city mayors and their governors, all that would be gone. And it ain't going to be rebuildable because it was all built on lies. Look at the governor of Michigan. Look at Governor Whitlis. She was elected on a fluke that had to do with the Flint water supply. She just happened to run at the right time. She had the right face. She wore tennis shoes. She had this quirky kind of weird-ass campaign, and she won. Well, she thinks it's a mandate. And she thinks with the power of the governor, she can do anything she wants. But she's being stopped by her own legislator. She's being stopped by the federal courts in her state and by the Supreme Court. In the end, the Democrat Party kingmakers pushed aside their slate of candidates and they picked China Joe to unite the nation. What a joke. What a joke, right? Big media delivered a massive in-kind campaign contribution to China Joe by disappearing the bad stories against him. And big tech followed suit, canceling anyone who tried to spread the evidence before the election. Hence, most of my colleagues got wiped out. 20 of them just gone off of YouTube just like that. Some had 1 million followers. 1 million freaking followers. You know how hard it is to get 1 million followers on YouTube? It's beyond me. I barely have 10,000. The refusal of Fox News to call the states of Florida and Texas for Trump was not an abundance of caution. Why would the network refuse to call Florida with 98% of the votes in, but call Arizona with over 1 million election day votes yet to be tallied? Why would they do that? Consider, only moments after its polls closed, California was called for Biden as well. States that had already been called for Biden, plus Arizona and California, then gave Biden the appearance of having more electoral votes than Trump, creating the impression that Biden was ahead. This media manipulation of the public's perception of unfolding events would be echoed over and over and over again in the polls. And they drove it into our minds when they declared China Joe the winner, or the projected winner. They started calling him the president-elect. And then he started standing in front of signs that say, the office of the president-elect. And then what did you see with Twitter? Everybody changed their sub-handle to Karen, President-elect Karen, President-elect George. I wasn't going to do it. I'm the voice of the revolution. You remember the sudden and coordinated stop to count the votes, right? And then they tossed all the poll watchers out, the Republicans, and then they brought in millions of votes, all for Biden. 100% of them would be for Biden. Now, statistically, that ain't possible. But remember those polls and the electoral vote tallies. And remember also that several weeks ago, Axios used the term red mirage to explain what the public was going to see on election night. Trump would appear to be winning, but the flood of mailed-in ballots that the Democrats insisted were necessary to protect the public from COVID would sweep Biden to victory. Hillary said, don't you concede under any circumstances, and I believe over the next few weeks we will win. Even Biden's self-designated designation as the president-elect is propaganda. You're being fed the propaganda. But the alternative appears worse. If Trump's challenges prove successful, if he flips some combination of the contested states so as to win the election, the master manipulators behind the scenes will have convinced millions and millions of Americans that the legal challenges were an abuse of process, that such a result will be illegitimate again, that the presidency has been stolen again. Trump's first term will look like a honeymoon compared with what will be spread by them facing after 2 or 3 or 4 weeks of Biden voters celebrating what they were told was Biden's victory. You could just see they won't be screaming. They'll be tearing their eyes out, and they'll be tearing people's eyes out. You know, over the weekend, we saw a Million MAGA march in D.C. Now, I don't know if there was 1 million or 1.5 million or 15,000. To me, it was a lot. It was enough to clog the streets, and it was a bigger group than I've ever seen there in D.C. And while the group was wonderful and patriotic and trash-free and decent, Antifa and BLM kept their distance. But at the end of the day, when the crowd began to, get a little bit less and less, and people were making their way to the hotels and back to the buses and back to their rendezvous points at the restaurants or whatever, that's when Antifa moved in. That's when they moved in and they began attacking people. They moved in black uniforms, and some were wielding knives and bats and They were wearing helmets, and they knocked people out, stomped people into the ground. And there were a few that were injured on both sides, but not many arrests. Not many arrests. The police stood down. The mayor of D.C. fed the innocents to the BLM just as they did in Charlottesville. And this is all part of the propaganda as well. But it's a type and a shadow of what's to come. And I don't like to see it. When this corruption finally begins to fall, it's going to be a big fall. It's going to be hard. I'm looking at some of these guys that have gone to jail already. They're middle workers and, not much to write home about. We're looking for the big guys to get arrested. The call out there has also been, Mr. Biden, tear down that wall. If the global media empire wins the voter fraud war, the wall is coming down. More than anything, it was the wall that got President Trump elected 4 years ago. In fact, I think it's what made people look up. It made them look up. When all the debating was going on and people were asking questions of the candidates, they asked President Trump about all the illegals. He said, well, I'm sorry, but if you're here illegally, you're going to have to go. And people said, what was that? What did he say? He said all the illegals would have to go? And then they said, well, how are you going to keep them out? He said, well, we're going to build a wall. And everybody looked up from their plows then. They said, a wall? A wall? Did he say a wall? It's about time. And that's what really started the red wave. That's what started Trump as a I don't know even how to describe it. That's what drew the silent majority out of the shadows and made them start following him. That's what really believed in the man, because he stuck to his guns. He never backed off of it. Mr. Trump's willingness to tackle illegal immigration earned him unswerving devotion from the voters, including Hispanics who live in the United States legally. It also brought Mr. Trump unstinting vitriol from anti-American leftists and corporate interests who organize and bankroll the Democrat Party and former Vice President China Joe's campaign for president. 4 years ago, the battle cry for Mr. Trump was build the wall. Today, the battle cry from the Democrats and their moneyed interests is Mr. Biden, tear down that wall. In his first term, Mr. Trump built approximately 400 miles of his wall. It's still being built to this day. He would have built much more if not for Democrats in Congress and federal court judges who conspired at every turn, including in Hawaii of all places, to thwart his effort to simply enforce our borders. Interestingly, President Trump's 400-mile wall is a little more than half of what Congress approved of building way back in 2006, but they didn't fund it. Among those in the United States Senate who voted to build that wall, guess who? China Joe of Delaware. He's long gone about that, though. He has a new political agenda now. Today, he is hostage to a ragtag revolution of anti-American socialists and cop-hating anarchists, and they have demands, and none is clearer or more vital to their twisted agenda than tearing down the wall. Already, China Joe has promised to halt all deportations, a naked sop to criminal aliens in this country who terrorize their own neighborhoods. Of the more than 100,000 illegals deported every year, Immigration and Customs Enforcement estimates that 80 to 90% of them have criminal records. They wouldn't be deported if they didn't have them. And yes, murder, larceny, and rape. No wonder so many American Hispanics love President Trump. Also, China Joe aims to restore and possibly expand the so-called Dreamers program that Mr. President Trump halted. At a minimum, the constitutionally suspect program provides amnesty to 800,000 illegals currently in the United States, and that's just the minimum. It's probably more, like between 22 and 25 million. Now, I don't really have a problem with people that are here in this country illegally from any nation. It doesn't matter. As long as they're holding a job and they're keeping their noses clean, their kids are in school, they're buying homes, buying cars. Can this nation take them? Sure it can. It can probably take 5 times that many. We don't have a problem with that. What we have a problem with is if we give amnesty to the good, law-abiding people that are documented to be citizens of other countries, not legally in the United States, and we don't fix the wall, then we're going to have twice that many again to give amnesties to in 5 or 6 years or 10 years. You have to finish the wall first. You have to be able to stop wave after wave after wave of the world's population that wants to live here from coming here illegally. And then you need to increase or modify the flow of people that want to come to this country, get a green card, and earn their way to citizenship or have their kids be citizens. I don't have a problem with that at all. This doesn't need to be just us only, America only. It isn't that way. We know this is a great place to live, a land of opportunity for all peoples in the world. But wouldn't it be better if it was the land of opportunity for everybody that was here? Once you have the wall, now you have the ability to do that. And now you have the ability and the necessity for those countries to do the same thing in their countries. You do. Because as long as the United States is siphoning off the best of the other nations, those nations cannot grow. They can't do anything because all their good people are leaving. And that's how you fix it. Trump has the right idea. It's exactly the right thing to do. Final segment coming up. Don't go away. We'll talk to the chat room here in about 5 seconds. Last segment coming up. X Squared Radio. All right, studio silence. Let's check the chat room out. What do we got here? Oh my gosh, look at all these people. Nefarious Titan. Immigration moratorium indefinitely. Not necessary. Really not necessary. You know, I drive by 5 million square feet of empty factory space every day as I go south of here. Either way, down 85 or down 77. Whole industrial parks. Some used to have factories in them. Some of them have brand new buildings and no factories in them. I have been working in manufacturing for 22 years, all over the country, from Texas to Chicago. And I can tell you this, those plants are empty for a reason. 2 reasons, actually. The first reason is they don't have access to capital. That's changing. As some of this foreign capital that was kept offshore by FATCA. FATCA is the foreign account taxation program. It allowed the IRS to go after Americans who had bank accounts in foreign countries. Because these people made the money overseas, and in order to bring the money back into this country, the IRS wanted to tax them 35%. So they said, well, screw that. I'll leave it in Ireland. I'll leave it in the Caymans. I'll leave it in Dubai. And that's what they did. And it turned out to be about $6 trillion. $6 trillion is a freaking lot of money. It's enough money to do serious stuff inside the United States. So what President Trump is doing is he's allowing these people that have made money offshore to bring the money back into this country and make it accessible to U.S. banks and not charge them near the taxes. 10%. I believe now he would even bring it back for free. One time. Just bring it all back. Just bring all the cash back. And what that would do is it would provide, and of course then you have to put Glass-Steagall back into place, and you have to relieve the Dodd-Frank, which is making it illegal for banks to do business with new startups. You would provide access to capital for these new factories. That would be one thing. The next thing, and this is something that even the factories that are in business right now, we're facing this right now down in Orangeburg, South Carolina. You can't find people. You can't find people to work in factories. There are not enough workers to do the work. And so can we take more immigrants in this country? Yeah, you bet we can. We have the jobs for them. And the jobs that they would do would earn money, and that earned money would buy cars and homes and groceries and movies and clothes and all the things that drive the economy in this country. So yeah, hell yeah, we could take more people, but it has to be done legally. You only want people that are qualified to do these jobs. But like I said, if we continuously take the best of the best from other countries, we'll bring the studio back in right now.
TFR.
Okay, really quick. June of this coming year is Contact in the Desert. It is the biggest UFO country in the world. UFO conference in the world. And the only difference that it's going to be this June is they're going to limit the size. It's threatening to go to 10,000 people. It's too many people for the venue. So they're going to limit it to about 8,000 people. And that means this event's going to sell out. And I want you to be there with me. So go to my website, brooksagnew.com, all one word. Go to the events tab and sign up for Contact in the Desert. All right? I do want to see you there. It would be a lot of fun. And I would really enjoy having you there. Okay, let's get back to it because we have the final segment. The point is that we could take more immigrants in this country. So I'm not for a moratorium against immigration, but we have to have the wall. The wall has to be complete. 1 immigrant per year reality TV show so all immigrants become a celebrity. It could be. It could be. I can tell you lots of my friends, not big corporate guys, have hired people from Guatemala, hired people from Laos, hired people from Bolivia. They're all great workers. They show up every day to work. They do great workmanship. They take great pride in their workmanship. And they rent homes and have babies and go to schools, and they're good people. They're good people. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And we have more room than you know in this country if it's well managed. Illegals are a big problem because they don't all have our best interest in mind. And a lot of them have criminal records, and we don't want to see that. We don't want to see people with criminal records. If you break the law in this country, you should be deported. Ilhan Omar should have been deported 3 years ago. But unfortunately, she is the congresswoman from Somalia. So we're stuck with her. We're stuck with her. What is that? It's going too fast here. Let's see. Assimilation necessary. Yes, the assimilation is necessary. Nobody likes a community to come in like 70,000 Somalis being put into one neighborhood in Minneapolis. Because what it does, it creates its own congressional district. They speak their own language. They have their own customs. They're just living under our sun. And it's not really assimilation. It's not really what we want to see happen. And not so much with Hispanics, not so much with Asians. They come in. They may live together for a while, but then they stratify. They grow out into other areas. And we just need to know who's coming in, where they come from, and make sure that they don't break our laws. But if they come here illegally, they're already breaking the law. No, I don't think a 5-year-old can determine their gender. Let's stay away from that. That's abuse. I agree. Serb 1978, I agree. It's abuse. Just let kids be kids, okay? Yeah. Love is in the live stream, no doubt about that. And our phone lines are still open, and I'm still watching the call board, so numbers are up. All right. Let's see. Arizona recount is coming. We know that's coming. You want to beware the alphabet people. If you know what I'm talking about, right? Norway's parliament has voted to expand the protections that the LGBTQ plus community has enjoyed in that nation since 1981 by expanding the definition of hate speech that can land a person in prison. Reuters reported Norway already was among the most liberal countries in Europe on this issue, allowing trans people to legally change gender without a medical diagnosis, etc., etc. But reported homophobic crimes have risen, and they want to take action against it. So parliamentarians agreed to expand their penal code this week, no pun intended. Now those found guilty of hate speech face a fine or up to a year in prison for private remarks and a maximum of 3 years for public comments. Monica Mayland, Minister of Justice. Don't you like that, Minister of Justice? What would I be? I'd be like the Minister of... I don't know. Where would I start? I have to start alphabetically somewhere. Minister of Technology. No, I'm not a programmer. Minister of Science. Yeah, maybe. Minister of Esoteric Science. Oh, I like that. That'd be like 1 or 2 notches above Deputy Chief Director of Paper Towels. I like that. Minister of Esoteric Science. Sideways Science. Minister of Justice said transgendered people are an exposed group when it comes to discrimination, harassment, and violence, close quote. It is imperative that the protection against discrimination offered by the criminal legislation is adapted to the practical situations that arise, she told Reuters. Practical situations. Sure, I get it. It is completing this... Oh, my goodness. We're forever hearing about this supposed rise in the LGBTQ plus hate crimes. And it's no wonder, really, given that the definition of what constitutes a hate crime keeps being, changed. It was hateful, wasn't it? The latest example is in Norway. As you know, this is really something that allows the alphabet people to assert themselves. Racial gender activists will not be at rest until every private citizen repudiates biological truth and relinquishes his every doubt about their dogma. Wow. Dude. No, really. I don't care that you have a dude, okay? Reuters noted that under the penal code, people charged with violent crimes can receive harsher sentences if a judge decides their actions were motivated by someone's sexual orientation or gender identity. Opponents of the change pointed out that it could be used to criminalize free speech, and it most certainly will. In the United Kingdom, there's already plans to criminalize speech in private homes. Don't come around my house. Come in my man cave. I guarantee you will be offended, because I offend absolutely everyone. All right, let's see here. Put my ads back out there because Christmas is coming, you know. It's coming on. You should be doing your Christmas planning now. Okay, like right now, you should now. Like I'm under the moon now is when you should do it. And one of the best gifts that you can give somebody is a book, and it should come from one of the books that are on the screen right now. And if you want to find out more, the link is right there in the descriptions, right down there. My finger's almost touching it. Almost. It goes kind of like right behind there, but it's right there. Just go to the store, and they're right there. They're priced right, and they're good products, and they got everything from, you know, polo shirts, coffee mugs, books, all kinds of products that I promise your favorite people will enjoy. Well, given everything we now know about the extent to which the Democrats have gone to try to steal the 2020 election for China Joe and Heels Up Harris, we cannot help but wonder if they did the same thing back in 2018 during the midterms to seize control of the House. You remember that? We worked on the Senate. President Trump went out there and rallied all over the country for senators and just didn't have enough resources to spread out to the House. So the Democrats sort of focused on that, trying to sell everybody on the idea that they could fix health care. They got to fix health care. They took our health care away. We got to get the health care back. Health care. And guess what happened? 5 seconds after the election was over, it was impeachment. And they didn't do diddly squat about health care. With the House majority, they gained the power it needed to launch the Russiagate conspiracy theory, associated coup attempt against President Trump, which we all now know is ramping up again. Now they are attempting this coup in a way that really no civilized country has seen in a long time, not since we've been doing it to other countries. Using Benford's law, for instance, it would not be all that difficult to plug in the numbers from 2018 to see if they passed muster. You want to try it? I like numbers. So it would seem all too unlikely, if you were to really stop to think about it, that in the midst of a booming Trump economy with record unemployment for all sectors, that American voters would suddenly decide halfway through the president's term that the best next step was to hire a job-killing Democrat, right? And tear it all apart. I mean, while there certainly have been a few hordes of Trump haters, and their voices have been heard on social media, I'm sure, but that's not a following. I mean, when you get a group together like that, that's called a riot. We don't like riots. We don't vote for riots. This is important because it would have taken a substantial effort by an unbelievable record number of Democrat voters to get out there and cast their ballots for not Trump, even as support among the Trump voters was already at record levels, and people were coming to rallies by the tens of thousands. Even if they were spontaneous rallies, they were showing up, right? It just defies logic. Now, while it is certainly possible the Democrat voters were simply more motivated, the Republican voters to get out there and vote, we really are not buying this. I'm just not buying it, especially with all that is now being revealed about how the left plays dirty and steals elections. No holds barred, right? I mean, we've seen all the safeties taken off, right? They're firing in all directions. Now, were the same Dominion voting machines that stole the votes for China Joe in 2020 also used in 2018 to steal the votes for House Democrats? Should an investigation be launched to determine whether the outcome of that election was influenced by corrupted voting machines and other forms of voter fraud? I think so. Right now, the most important thing is to get to the bottom of the 2020 election. We all agree to that. But perhaps the investigations taking place with regards to this election are also going to bring forth evidence that sheds light on what happened in that election in 2018. Regardless, it is worth keeping in mind that this is not the Democrats' first rodeo, if you catch our drift. They have been cheating for many, many decades. If you look at since the DNC has been in existence since 1848 until now, that's a long time, right? From 1848 until now is like a long time. 172 years, is it? Something like that. The point is, out of all those years, Republicans have only controlled the White House, the Senate, and Congress for 14 years. The rest of the time has been controlled by Democrats. They've been doing this for a long, long time. Buying votes, selling votes, suppressing votes, using propaganda to influence elections. Even during the recent Democrat primaries in New Jersey, in South Carolina, vote rigging was used. This being his first primary, it was the first time he ever won a primary, despite being one of the flailing candidates with very little support from his party ever. He had to withdraw from races every single time he's entered because of plagiarism and lack of funding and one thing or another. Our hope and prayer is that the Trump team is right now unearthing incontrovertible evidence to completely dismantle the Democrat Party, bankrupt them, and their vote-thieving operations once and for all. Until then, we would urge all our listeners to do the same for the preservation of our republic, which is hanging by a thread. By the way, all this was prophesied, that in the last days the republic would hang by a thread. You know, the devil is in Georgia. Oh, yeah. Georgia's going to be kind of the model. When we work on processes, we always work on a model process. Work all the bugs out of it, put the right robots in it, put the right detection systems, the right work procedures, and then we use that as a model, a best practice to work the other processes off of. And a curious thing happened as Fulton County, Georgia election officials counted the mail-in ballots at Atlanta's State Farm Arena in the days after the election. In the early hours of November 5th, a surge of some 20,000 mail-in votes suddenly appeared for China Joe out of nowhere, and approximately 1,000 votes for President Trump mysteriously just disappeared. It just disappeared from his own totals in the critical swing state. Now, a poll watcher noticed this suspicious shift in votes while monitoring the interim election results on the Georgia Secretary of State website. And he drew attention to it. He said, "Hey, something is not right here. I concluded from looking at these results that this was an irregularity. This just ain't so, since there was no obvious reason for President Trump's totals to have decreased while China Joe's suddenly increased dramatically. So, Voter GA co-founder, his name is Garland Favorito, he swore in an affidavit he filed this week with the Secretary of State's office. Now, Favorito suspects a variety of factors, including that votes were artificially inflated for Biden while using the same Dominion voting system used by Antrim County, Michigan, which erroneously transferred 6,000 votes away from Trump and shuffled them right over to China Joe. Last year, Georgia contracted with Dominion to automate vote tabulations in all 159 of its counties. The software appears to have thrown votes from Trump to Biden here too, he said in a Real Clear Investigations interview. Or Biden ballots were just manufactured out of Swiss cheese, out of nothing, out of balsa wood. The large disparity of gains between the two candidates was something I had never witnessed before in my years of election monitoring, said Favorito, a career IT professional who has been a leading advocate for election integrity in the state for the past 2 decades. He says he's not a Republican or a Trump supporter. On November 10th, which is a few days ago, Favorito sent his affidavit to Georgia Secretary of State recommending a full by-hand ballot recount. The next day, his office announced it will conduct such an audit for the presidential race. China Joe currently leads Trump by more than 14,000 votes in the state. Now, this is a good first step. I agree. A recount will be able to determine if there was some electronic vote manipulation, right? It will establish a model by which the other states using the Dominion software can be fixed, it can be repaired. In addition to helping certify the presidential race, he said it's imperative investigators identify the source of the irregularities before the state holds its 2 U.S. Senate runoff races, which happen on January 5th. Got to make sure this doesn't repeat itself, right? Now, Georgia's ground zero, right, in this battle for the control of the Senate. Republicans currently hold a 50-48 edge. But if they lose both Georgia's seats, which Stacey Abrams said she's going to make sure happens, presumptive Vice President-elect Kamala Harris could cast tie-breaking votes to carry out the Democrat agenda of packing the court, of appointing liberal federal judges, things like that. Bringing in Puerto Rico, bringing in D.C. as states, adding 4 more senators and who knows how many congressmen. While noting that no election is without what they admit are isolated issues, there always are, Dominion states, I quote, election safeguards, from testing and certification of voting systems to canvassing and auditing, prevent malicious actors from tampering with vote counts and ensure that final vote tallies are accurate, close quote. Sounds like a bunch of propaganda to me. The Fulton County shift was so dramatic, it seems as if someone had dumped a huge batch of mail-in ballots for China Joe into the system in the middle of the night. The fact is, no such votes ever arrived. No truck ever arrived. They didn't put more paper ballots in the system. That's the crazy thing. It was just simply electronically added. Now, one candidate can't go up by 20,000 and the other do nothing. That's just not going to happen. The root cause of the irregularity was something electronic. And I think it's going to change the results to show President Trump won Georgia and won it handily. This model, when it's applied to the other 29 states, using that Dominion package, which includes hardware and software and machines, it's going to show China Joe did not actually win any states at all, not of those 29. And this is the result of a software and equipment malware. The effort was so well coordinated, so widely practiced, it is evident that it was planned. It didn't happen just out of the blue. It didn't happen out of the blue. No. The money came in from BLM and George Soros, neither of which have any business whatsoever being involved in American election tallies. Precincts across the state reported problems with the Dominion system during the summer's primary elections, including malfunctioning machines, even before June's meltdown. Favorito said he and his nonprofit, Voter GA, which stands for Voters Organized for Trusted Elections Results in Georgia, warned Raffensperger, that's the and his staff, not to buy the pricey equipment and software from the Canadian company. They knew good and well they should never have bought this system in the first place. We explained that Dominion was rejected in Texas for failing to meet basic security standards before they bought it. Favorito suspects similar surges in China Joe's results happened in every state where this software was used. He also said the hundreds of drop boxes that Raffensperger agreed to distribute at shopping centers and other cities throughout the state may have encouraged third parties to collect ballots in the name of other voters and stuff them into the boxes, which is illegal in the state of Georgia. Ballot harvesting was illegal in all 50 states, but California actually approved it into law. All this is coming down to a massive effort in Georgia to expose this computer system. I hope that it happens. I pray that it happens. You should be focused on it happening. If we're successful in Georgia, we'll be successful in the other 29 states. If not, this election is going to Congress, and Congress will reelect President Trump, and the Senate will reelect Vice President Biden. So hang in there, Earth Explorers. Try to end on a positive note here. I'll be back on Wednesday night, and we'll discuss where we are between now and then and where I think we're going to be for the rest of the week. Remember, don't let this get you down. Whatever you do, turn off the mainstream news, and that includes Fox. Please don't listen to the media. You just stay tuned here, and I'll keep you straight. Go out and look for the good in others and help it to grow a little bit every day. Before long, you will have saved the planet. Remember, you are source. Everything inside of you is by nature good, or you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here with me tonight. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for supporting me on DLive. We've been on Twitter or YouTube now for a lot of years. That may soon come to an end. It's all right. Where we go one, we go all. Now go and do, and I'll see you on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Thanks, Earth Explorers. Be kind to one another. We'll also be, hopefully my guitar arrives this week, and maybe I'll lay down some music, and who knows, I might even share some of it here on this program. Thanks so much.